Okay. Good evening. I'm Carolyn Rye, Chair of the School Board of Virginia Beach, and I hereby call this meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. on this 22nd day of September 2020. Pursuant to the state of emergency related to the COVID-19 pandemic, the governor's executive orders, the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as amended by the Virginia General Assembly, and the school board's April 7th, 2020 emergency resolution, the school board and selected staff members will meet in person at the school administration building. However, at this time, it's impractical and unsafe to allow other persons to attend the school board meeting due to physical distancing and safety precautions related to the pandemic. Members of the public will be able to observe the school board meeting through live streaming on vbschools.com, broadcast on VBTV channel 47, and on Zoom. With that, I will ask Madam Clerk to take a roll of those in attendance, both in person and via Zoom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Present inside the school board chambers is Ms. Rye, Ms. Melnick, Ms. Anderson, Mr. Edwards, Ms. Felton, Ms. Hughes, Ms. Manning, Ms. Owens, and Ms. Riggs. Attending the school board meeting via Zoom is Ms. Holtz and Ms. Weems.
Thank you. So I will now call for a moment of silence. And please stand as you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. That brings us no recognitions tonight, so we are up to item 6, adoption of the agenda. Any modifications to the agenda? Okay, hearing then, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Mr. Edwards, a second. Mrs. Felton. Discussion? Okay, please raise your hand if you approve.
Ms. Holtz, how do you vote?
I approve.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a unanimous vote.
Thank you. That brings us to the superintendent's report. Dr. Spence, we look forward to your report.
Thank you, and good evening, Madam Chairwoman and members of the board. Here are a few items of interest for you and our families to know. Well, you probably remember that this is normally the time of year when we do our big 5th grade field trip to NAS Oceana for STEM Day, but thanks to COVID, Oceana had to do a virtual air show. So we collaborated with them to do a virtual STEM Day. Although students and flight enthusiasts did not walk the flight line this year, NAS Oceana, NASA, the VBCPS Department of Teaching and Learning, and other partners in education developed a once-in-a-lifetime virtual experience that zoomed right to our 5th grade families' living rooms. During last Friday's 5th grade virtual air show and STEM Day, more than 5,000 students heard from NAS Oceana's commanding officer, Captain John Hewitt, watched videos of tactical jets, engaged in lessons facilitated by local military experts as well as NASA scientists and engineers, learned more about the work and accomplishments of local military and STEM professionals, and engaged in hands-on scientific inquiry and STEM projects. So it was a great day, and while of course next year we all hope to be back on the flight line, some of the lessons used virtually this time will enhance the STEM curriculum for years to come. I also have an update to my June 8th Superintendent's report regarding our nominees for the Virginia Association for the Gifted Teacher of the Year Award. I am pleased to announce that Ms. Megan Scott has now been recognized as the Virginia Gifted Teacher of the Year for Region 2. Ms. Scott is a gifted resource teacher at Brandon Middle School and consistently seeks new and innovative ways to engage students, parents, and teachers. She's coached teams for the Physics Olympics and the MakerBot Expo and has helped to plan Star Wars Day and gingerbread house making competitions. So congratulations to Ms. Scott and for everything that she does for our students every day to make a difference in her school community. At 3, VB Schools is one of 15 divisions that has been recognized by the Virginia Department of Education as a school division of innovation for designing and implementing alternatives to traditional instructional practices that improve student learning and promote college and career readiness and citizenship. This award recognizes the work supported by community stakeholders and school partnerships as VBCPS redesigns the high school learning experience to create a personalized learning environment for all students. The school division was honored because of the work that high school administrators, in collaboration with their leadership teams, have invested in to define foundational components of high school redesign, including rigorous, relevant, and real-world learning experiences, student-curated works of substance, a meaningful plan for post-secondary pursuits, and a culminating signature experience. Our plan for high school redesign creates consistency across our 11 comprehensive high schools and allows each one at the same time the flexibility to implement innovative programs and provide a personalized pathway for each student. The aim is that all high school students demonstrate their learning and share examples representing growth, ownership, and mastery of core content and 21st century skills, which is another example of our commitment to ensuring that every student is achieving at their maximum potential in an engaging and challenging learning environment, and an ongoing commitment to our core value of innovation. And finally, the division's first virtual community resource fair will take place over Zoom on Tuesday, October the 6th from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. and will feature a panel of representatives from VBCPS, the local community, and the Virginia Department of Education. They will discuss special education topics and other relevant information about programs and services available that support positive outcomes for students and families of children with disabilities. This event is sponsored by the VBCPS Special Education Advisory Committee, the Office of Programs for Exceptional Children, and the Office of Family and Community Engagement, and registration is available using the link on vbschools.com. Thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Spence. That brings us to approval of the minutes, and I do recall there was an amendment request. Did that go to everybody, Madam Clerk? Or
It was sent to the board member with the request, and
so then I will ask now for
Yeah,
modifications.
if we could just make one modification. It's my understanding when someone has an abstention that the reasons be noted in the minutes. And so I asked Ms. Toniato if she could make that change, and she did so. So if we could just add that, the reason for the abstentions on the one vote from the last meeting. Thank you.
So with that modification, are there any others? Okay, I'm sorry. Give us a minute. The reasons for the abstention. So we'll ask Madam Clerk to read. Just give us a moment. Thank you.
the modification to the minutes will read as follows. The following board members abstained from voting, and this is in reference to the equity policy: Ms. Manning, Ms. Hughes, and Ms. Weems. The reasons stated for the abstentions were: Ms. Manning, not enough information to make an informed decision. Ms. Hughes, in favor of an education equity policy, but many questions were not answered. Ms. Weems, does want an equity policy, but lack of diverse community input, no information regarding training, curriculum, and budget.
Mrs. Anderson.
Mrs. Linetti, it's my understanding that an abstention is the same thing as a negative vote when you look at Robert's Rules of Order.
No, that's incorrect. You do not count it towards the voting on there. So your abstention, you wouldn't count. So if you were looking for, let's say, a majority or 2/3 vote on it, you don't count the abstention vote towards it. But if you abstain, you need to give the reason why And there are obviously many reasons for abstention, but no, it does not count as a negative vote.
So are there specifications as to what reasons can be allowed in abstentions, or can it just be any reason?
Can I have a point of order? This is about amending the agenda, not
Correct.
if you had
My
a
point
question.
I think I have a valid
Ms. Rye,
question on
could I have a
this.
point of
No,
order, Ms. Rye?
Fair point. No, we have conveyed what the modification request is. So with that, I'll just ask if
I just want to know, is there
That should have
is
been
there a
discussed at the
reason?
last meeting, not under this topic right now.
Thank
I
you,
think-
Ms. Linetti.
Any other modifications? Okay, hearing none. Please, all those in favor, please raise your hand.
Chairwoman, did we get a motion and a second?
Oh, I beg your pardon. Okay. Let's start. Yep. Okay, thank you.
I move to approve with the amended changes.
Okay, Mrs. Manning, and a second. Mrs. Hughes. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Ms. Anderson, how do you vote?
No,
My hand is up.
Okay,
Miss Holtz, I do have your affirmative vote.
okay, and
Can
all,
you confirm that is,
I raised my hand.
Ms. Holtz, is that you're in agreement with the minutes?
Yes.
Thank you.
and all those opposed?
Okay, Madam Chair. Those opposed were Ms. Riggs, Ms. Melnick, Ms. Anderson. Those in favor were Ms. Rye, Mr. Edwards, Ms. Belton, Ms. Holtz, Ms. Hughes, Ms. Manning, Ms. Owens, and Ms. Weems. It did pass 8-3.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, that brings us to hearing of citizens and delegations on agenda items. The school board will now hear comments on agenda items from citizens and delegations who've signed up with our clerk prior to this meeting. In-person speakers will be called first, followed by speakers participating through Zoom or by telephone. It's not necessary for speakers to ask if they can be heard. Speakers should begin speaking once their name is called. As a reminder, each speaker has 4 minutes to present and will be given a 30-second warning before time expires. Once the speaker's time has expired, the speaker should stop making remarks and the next speaker will be queued to speak. Please keep in mind the school board invites the public to also submit comments through our group email account, which can be found on our website. So with that, we will begin with our in-person speakers, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Our first speaker is Sarah Zudima. She is not here. Our next speaker is Brandon Wicks.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Braden Wicks. Good evening, Dr. Spence and members of the board. I would like to thank Ms. Manning and Ms. Melnick for taking time to call me last week. I really enjoyed speaking with both of you. Thank you to Mr. Edwards for the phone call. I hope we're able to find time to talk in the future. I would also like to thank Mrs. Hughes for the email and for her support. As we are all aware, this year has presented many challenges. These challenges have caused chaos and heightened anxiety for many, which has only fueled anxiety and stress for decisions about the school year. I'm sure you can understand the distress my husband and I experienced last Thursday when we were notified that our daughter would not return to ODS face-to-face unless we entered her into a lottery. The confusion continued when we were told that she had randomly been placed in the class with the teacher who had been selected as the virtual teacher for the remaining of the semester. The follow-up email and even the placement email was equally as confusing. Our daughter's teacher is phenomenal. Phenomenal. Dr. Spence, you need to look into her. She is unbelievable. If she can do the things that she's doing virtually, I can only imagine what she can do in person. As a former teacher, I can only imagine the stress all teachers are currently facing. She's made a significant impact in my daughter's life in just 9 short days, and has handled the stress of the year with grace. While we originally chose face-to-face, my husband and I were torn all weekend. Would it be fair to keep our daughter home with her amazing teacher or switch her face-to-face and her teacher? We made the extremely difficult decision to say goodbye to Mrs. Scott. Today, we were notified that our daughter will return face-to-face with a gifted resource teacher. Is this GRT a current Virginia Beach employee? Will this GRT be her teacher all year? Or will there be changes in the second semester? The amount of questions from parents about ODS is overwhelming, and our students deserve better. With summer surveys due in the middle of August, the need for additional space and teachers was known. So why weren't parents notified before and not to waited until the second week of school? Why was this not addressed immediately? It seems the district continues to use smoke and mirrors to confuse parents and give the illusion of confidence. As the superintendent and the board, it is your job to lead. It is very apparent to the public that this board is extremely interested in proving each other wrong. It's embarrassing and it's outrageous. I would encourage each of you to think about why you decided to pursue a position on the board. I highly doubt it was to argue back and forth with other adults.
30 seconds.
I ask that you please search in your hearts for the reason that why you decided to serve. And Dr. Spence, why I cannot fathom the stress that you are under. You are the captain of this ship. I would ask that you take full responsibility for the confusion that has ensued within the school year, especially with ODS and the Virtual Learning Center. It's extremely disheartening to parents that you are, quote unquote, sending out the band to play when the ship is sinking.
And that is time.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The next speaker that is here is Amanda Robinson.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. A letter was distributed. You each received it on email, but there are 26 families now that have signed on as well. Let me commend the school board and the administration. Overall, I have been impressed with the response to the COVID pandemic. Communication, outreach, and planning have been excellent until now. I have a child at Cook and one at ODS. I am here tonight on behalf of my child and all the other children at ODS. I'm concerned with the plan for the lottery. The lottery is essentially a way to pick winners and losers. Let me explain my thinking. 80% of the families at ODS chose for their child to return to face-to-face. I will interpret that to mean that those families believe that an in-person educational experience is worth the health risks. Not only that, they believe, like I do, that my child learns better in a brick-and-mortar environment. If it's safe to go, how can you assign kids at random to learn in a setting that is less conducive for them? Forcing any subset of children to engage in a learning environment that they and their parents deem suboptimal, while others get the benefit of going to school, is unacceptable. I don't know how I would tell my child that the other 100 and so other kids are able to go, but he and his 10 other friends have to stay at home and do it virtually for several months. The health mitigation strategies will likely be a part of our lives for the foreseeable future. Our schools should plan accordingly. I want an equitable alternative to the lottery. Something like half the students go per grade, in person for 2 weeks at a time, and alternate. That way each student gets equal learning environmental opportunities. Or you get trailers, or you go every other day. I feel like there are other alternatives, and that's for you to decide, but the lottery is really unacceptable. Please reconsider the lottery in favor of something that is fair to all students, that can be applied potentially long-term if needed. We don't want to leave our children's educational experience to chance. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, none of the other in-person speakers are here. We will continue with our online speakers. Our first speaker is Christine Lewis. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Good evening. I am a VBCPS parent reading an anonymous letter on behalf of a VBCPS teacher. Good evening, school board members and Superintendent Spence. Does it not speak volumes about the culture and predicament that we as teachers feel we are in, that someone had to orchestrate a method for teachers to voice their feelings and opinions anonymously? If you're slow to process that, it means your teachers fear great retribution in speaking out. I currently have 36 kids on my roster, 4 of which are noted as remote. Have you ever been in a classroom with 32 teens? How in the world am I to social distance these students? Are we just throwing it out the window? It is only going to take one student to snap a picture of my class and upload it online. Or shall we talk about the one roll of paper towels and 1 bottle of spray placed on my desk? Am I the one cleaning 32 desks in all my free time of students switching classes, me performing my hall duty and trying to use the restroom all in 3 minutes? Or maybe we should talk about the incorrect information Dr. Robertson shared with you last school board meeting. The one where he got up and talked about how he graciously allowed teachers to choose between teaching both sets of students or only teaching the face-to-face students, and then made it sound like he was in such a bad position because too many of us teachers declined it. First of all, Dr. Robertson, feel free to rewatch the tape of yourself. You could not have made us teachers sound any more selfish than you did. Did you forget to mention the Princess Anne High School principal calling their teachers and telling them they no longer had a choice? They were doing both, no matter how they felt. Or maybe my school, where we were all but told to do it after being given a major guilt trip, and that if we don't do it, we'd need to have a face-to-face conversation on why we chose what we chose. Who is the bully now? You have zero idea of how hard myself and my colleagues have worked. You can follow the Dog and Pony Show on Twitter and think everything is rainbows and butterflies, but your teachers are hurting. We call each other crying. We spend our weekends inside, glued to our computers. Self-care, what is that? Some of you have never been in the classroom. Some of you need to get back into the classroom, and it shows. Our personal children and families suffer. We are burnt out, we are tired, and you are gravely unaware. And you proved this, Dr. Spence, when you flew under the radar this summer with your hefty $12,000 bonus and took hours away from us. Congrats. I hope it was well spent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Naomi Fletcher. Please unmute.
Welcome. Hello. Good evening, and my name is Naomi Fletcher, and I wanted to address my concerns and frustrations with the process of choosing an option between 1 and 2 that was sent to us in July. At the time, you all had made a point to say that y'all were going to make a decision that was going to not be political. However, 2 weeks into school, we are learning that it is definitely political. That our children are being sent back to school face to face if we chose option 1, only because some of the schools do not have enough room for them to remain virtual, which that was not what was told to us when y'all sent out the emails. Y'all said that if we wanted to remain virtual, we could. However, my kid attends Lansdowne High School, and I'm being told as a 9th grader, he wasn't given the option to change when y'all sent this out last week, only 10th and 12th grade. That is not the case. Lansdowne Elementary School reached out to all their parents and asked who wanted to go face-to-face or remain virtual. So that is not true when they had told me that. They have now placed my son on a waiting list so he can remain virtual. But I had made Dr. Askew aware that he is not returning back face to face, that I will sign my child up for homeschooling. He is not going back to the public school system. Y'all do not have the ventilation nor the capability to manage this virus. Say my child does get the virus. Say one of my family members get the virus. Any of these teachers getting the virus. Are y'all going to assume the responsibility of our medical costs or assume the responsibility if one of us die? How many children does it have to take? How many family members have to die? How many teachers have to get hurt for y'all to decide or make a decision that is not political or what's best for everyone as a whole versus the minority that is driving these decisions? As a parent, I am extremely frustrated. I have so much anxiety. I haven't slept since the school system told me last week that my son has to return face to face because they have no room for him to remain virtual. I just think that you guys had since March to get this together and y'all have not. Y'all just keep sending confusing emails that parents don't understand with another confusing email to cover up the email that you sent before. When we call the schools, it's difficult at times to reach leadership as far as the assistant principal and principals. I haven't gotten a call back from the school board. I got an email, which it seems like you guys didn't even read the email that I got back, because if you did, which I wrote back had nothing or wasn't even close to what I was saying. So I just wanted to leave with that. I mean, I know as a parent, I feel like I'm not being heard and my concerns are not being considered, but I just wanted to leave it at that and, you know, just share my feelings about this.
Our next speaker is Erin Cardiff. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Thank you. I am a current parent of a student at in Virginia Beach Public Schools, and I am going to be reading a letter, an anonymous letter on behalf of a teacher in the school system. I would like to ask the board a question. Do you feel that other districts are doing a disservice to their students by staying virtual for the first 9 weeks? If you say yes, this is where I have a problem. We have many of our students who are remaining virtual. So are you saying that the students who are face-to-face are receiving a better education than those who remain virtual? Did you tell parents of option 2 kids, well, your child is not physically in school, so they will be further behind, or won't receive great instruction because they are staying virtual? I'm pretty sure not one parent was given this response. So I ask again, are we doing a disservice to teaching children virtually? Well, more than half of VBCPS students are not getting an adequate education, as some of the board members have suggested, because they are remaining virtual. So tell me how your argument makes any sense that we have to have students back face-to-face for them to get a proper education. Sorry, virtual students, you are just going to be left behind while the face-to-face kids excel. This really makes sense, or does it? Virtual for all, if it's good enough for most of our district students. Please explain how virtual learning is so bad, yet many of our students are choosing virtual learning. Maybe because it's safe? Please advise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next online speaker is Courtney Mikowitz. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Hi, I am a Virginia Beach citizen. I have preschool age kids who will eventually be going to Virginia Beach schools unless something changes. Because as of right now, there is no way I would put them in Virginia Beach schools. I will put them in private schools. But I'm here today because I want to support our Virginia Beach City Public Schools staff. So I'm going to read 2 letters on behalf of anonymous staff members that were submitted. The first letter: school nurses, as of Friday afternoon, did not have the appropriate PPE to provide to the teacher assistants that are to assist special education students when they come in on Tuesday, nor do the nurses have the appropriate equipment to protect themselves when assessing these students with COVID-19 symptoms. So much for the school division caring so much about their staff and students. Second letter: I am truly concerned that the maximum number of elementary school children, 44 masked or unmasked, permitted to ride the school bus is way too high. I am also concerned that the bus drivers are not being afforded a work environment, being that there are no barriers in place other than a cloth face mask and maybe a face shield to attempt to prevent the drivers from contracting COVID-19. There is no possible way for bus drivers to maintain the proper physical distance from students as the students enter and exit the school bus. Barriers have been approved at the national level, but have yet to be approved on the state and local level. This delay is unacceptable. Testing by the manufacturers for some sort of protective barrier should have been conducted over the summer to ensure that necessary safety protocols were met and for barriers to be installed into school buses before the start of the school year. VBCPS faces driver shortages every school year, but this year, in my opinion, the number of driver shortages will increase due to the lack of safety measures taken to protect the bus drivers from contracting COVID-19. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Allison Verbanek. Please unmute.
Good evening. I am a VBCPS parent reading an anonymous letter on behalf of a VBCPS staff member. I attended Virginia Beach School from kindergarten through graduation. My children have attended Virginia Beach School since kindergarten, and my entire teaching career has been in Virginia Beach. I love and am committed to this school system. However, recent actions of the school board central office make me feel that neither truly have my children's or my best interests at heart. I realize this is a trying time for all involved, and none of us have been through a situation like this in the past. In my job, I am expected to use research and data to fuel my decisions. It does not seem this school system does this when it comes to making their own decisions. For some reason, 3 feet social distancing has become a norm in the face-to-face prep, even though there are no peer-reviewed studies or official guidance to support this. 6 feet has and continues to be minimum according to CDC, and recent studies question if even that distance is enough. Moreover, the recent guidance from the CDC as of September 20th, our school system is in moderate to higher risk for every single factor as it pertains to schools reopening. Our yellow phase metrics are not safe. The green metrics are questionable, as most school systems that opened successfully were at less than 2% positivity rates with less than 5 cases per 100,000. We all want to be back in the classroom, but not at the risk of increasing the spread of COVID throughout our community. Family choice should not trump community safety, and I am appalled at the disregard some members of the board have for others. At this point, the student and staff choices and preferences are a joke. Much of what has been told to parents and teachers concerning the 2 plans failed to be true. For example, the guarantee of homeschool teachers for option 1, the consistency or even existence of option 2's VLC, when students will actually be returning face-to-face at various grade levels. Teachers will teach either face-to-face or virtual, not both. A quick Google search will show you how ineffective instruction is when a teacher has both face-to-face and virtual students. Asking teachers to take on this added stress for an additional $5 to $15 a day is absurd, considering the extra time involved. Most teachers I know, myself included, are working many extra hours to make virtual learning work. I cannot fathom how I will ever have time for my family once I am expected to teach both virtually and face-to-face. Despite this being touted as a choice, many of us were pressured into agreeing to teach both. On top of the inconsistencies and outright unsafe decisions made by the central office with the board's blessing, I am dismayed by the behavior of some board members. I appreciate the board enforcing the mask policy, but I'm concerned that what I saw in the September 9th board meeting is a preview of showdowns that will occur in our classroom. Ms. Hughes and Ms. Mannings, you both should be ashamed of yourselves. I implore you to stop politicizing my children's education and my livelihood. I would also like to add, as a parent, I am not happy with this plan as well. It is dangerous for our staff, students, and community. If there was ever a time to pivot, it would be now to ensure safety. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Matthew Smith. Please unmute.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for the time to speak today. Thank you very much. I have a daughter at Old Donation School and one at the Legal Studies Academy, and I second what Mrs. Wicks and Mrs. Robinson said quite well. And frankly, I'm going to take very little time because they've largely said what I came here to say. I signed up when ODS published their lottery plan, and I think there are a number of problems with that. And I'm like Mrs. Robinson, I'm not sure it solves more problems than it creates. But if I understand the letter I got from Dr. Hedrick today correctly, then option 1 sixth graders are going back in person. And if that's the case, then I will leave my time to the speakers after me. I appreciate the hard work. It sounds like there's a lot of frustration out there, which may mean that the plan is somewhere in the middle, but I'm glad that we're getting back to in-person instruction, and I look forward to seeing where we get in the future. So I appreciate the time, and that's all I have.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kelly Walker. Please unmute.
Welcome. Thank you. Good evening, Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chairwoman Melnick, Superintendent Spence, and member of the school board. My name is Kelly Walker, and I serve as the president of the Virginia Beach Education Association. I would like to speak tonight on the scheduling and staffing update. When the pandemic hit and the school buildings closed in March, members of the VBA shared with the school board and the administration of the many concerns we had regarding the pandemic and then the safe reopening of schools to a face-to-face learning environment. When the reopening plan was announced in July, we continued to advocate that the employees be given a reasonable sense of security by providing a sick leave bank that makes sense during a pandemic, and that we have the resources we need to open safely. We urged the board to consider a slowed down approach to the reopening of schools so we could focus on getting virtual learning right and to implement best practices learned from lower PCR districts. We simply requested more time to improve the supports we needed to do our jobs properly and safely under these complex conditions. And now, as the day when many students pivot to a face-to-face learning environment approaches, we are still faced with many challenges. First and foremost, I know for a fact that many teachers are leaving not just our school division, but the profession. For over a decade, educators have seen benefits erode and pay stagnant. Class sizes increase and the demands that our society has placed on our schools land squarely on the shoulders of our principals, counselors, and teachers. And now employees have been forced to choose between their well-being and their jobs. Many are throwing in the towel. Small class size is the key to safely return to face-to-face instruction. Our challenge, we did not have the resources to lower class size before the pandemic, and we have not had a sudden windfall of revenue to provide the resources we need to make it work. And we certainly do not have the resources now. The fact that the division has a need for teachers to teach both face-to-face and online at the same time translates to not enough resources, and in this case, staff, to accommodate the pivot plan. And the problem with offering teachers a choice to teach both face-to-face and online and then coercing teachers to take the deal negatively impacts morale. Plus the stipend offer for this increase in workload, it's not enough. Now administrators are finding creative ways to accommodate the plan. In some cases, face-to-face classes have up to 34 students. Classrooms have too many desks in them. Safety and mitigation standards are ignored. And now those who teach remotely must do so from their school building, when teachers were assured months ago that they would be able to teach remotely. Many educators feel as though stakeholders do not have their best interests in mind when making these decisions. This is why teachers who can leave the profession are doing so, and there will be more. And now, to make up for this teacher shortage, class caps for option 2 teachers have been raised to 28 for kindergarten and up to 33 for 4th and 5th grades. These class sizes inhibit the teacher's effectiveness, especially online. Teachers were asked to volunteer to switch to teach online, understanding that their class size would be larger, but not over 30. Teachers are working 12 to 14 hours a day. This workload is not sustainable. I worry for our profession, and so should you. My time is short tonight, and I would like to suggest that the school division develop a dashboard that updates cases of coronavirus at each school. I've advocated for this with senior staff. I understand a bill that supports this dashboard has passed the House and the General Assembly. Transparency by the way of a dashboard will go a long way to promote trust in our division. As the pandemic continues to impact our lives, it is important we continue to work collaboratively to ensure we stay safe.
That is time, Ms. Walker.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sarah Clark. Please unmute. Ms. Clark, you may begin speaking.
Sorry. I'm so proud of Virginia Beach Schools for enacting the equity policy at the last school board meeting. But as we heard from many speakers, we still have a ways to go, and I see evidence of that in the reopening plan. Last week, ODS put forth a plan that would have some students be put into a lottery in order to maintain their current class, teacher, and schedule at the school, and parents were justly upset. I do not begrudge their upset, but as a result of the outpouring of frustration, a plan came forward that would ensure ODS students will not have to deal with that, but will be kept safe. A plan that included 4 out of 7 staff allocations and a gifted resource teacher. That's fantastic. But what about the other schools that are having students change teachers or schools suddenly because this plan did not address issues that we brought forth in August? Sorry. Why does our school that is already shown to have disparity in its selection of its student body, why does a school that has already shown that it's disparity in its student body get to be one that pulls teachers from other schools? Why do students at SeaTac, Thorogood, and so many others, many of which are Title I, have to deal with these changes? Some of our most at-risk kids may not even have transportation to school, and that has not even been addressed. I want to be clear that I do not begrudge the students and families of ODS for being upset or advocating. They should advocate for their students. But I am asking, why is it only those students that we adjust to make sure they do not have to deal with these issues? Do not wait until the equity audit to make our schools equitable. Act now. If we do not have the staff or resources to make it work in all of our schools, then protect all of our students. And as we talk about staffing, it's important for us to acknowledge the reasons staff are leaving and will continue to leave. One of the issues that we brought up when this plan was presented to staff and public was a concern that this plan would lead to inconsistency and unpredictability for our students, our families, our staff, and our community. We noted that constant shifting breeds anxiety and worries. I don't know about you all, but I'm anxious as a teacher and as a parent. It feels like every time I turn on my phone, there's another email with another change. Students changing teachers, teachers teaching hybrid, changing high school that will come in yellow. Now teachers have to teach from their classroom, even if they don't have students returning. I am exhausted. Parents are exhausted. Teachers are exhausted. Instructional staff is leaving. School counselors are leaving. We are already understaffed in custodial and bus drivers. I know so many of us who have left or are looking. When do we admit that this plan was good in theory, but missed the mark in talking to those who have knowledge about day-to-day implementation? And those that did talk to you told you in August that this would not work. How long will we keep pivoting before we acknowledge that this plan, that it isn't a plan that works in practice? Until we can fill the holes in instructional staff because too many have resigned or retired early, and in a profession that is 77% women nationally, how is this plan implementation equitable for women? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lauren Logan. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Oh, hi. Good evening, Dr. Spence, Chairwoman Rye, and school board members. I want my children to go back to school. My children desperately want to go back to school. I think we can all agree that children should be in the classroom, but we are just not ready. Due to an overabundance of students selecting option 1, this week my son's school asked all option 1 students to reconsider and stay virtual for the rest of the semester. While my son desperately wants to be back at school, we decided to keep him virtual for the rest of the semester to help make the face-to-face numbers better in his school. As we all know, classrooms cannot magically get bigger. We cannot magically fit the same amount of desks in a classroom and keep recommended distance. When option 1 students outnumber the number of desks available, our administrators need to get very creative. No solution is a good one. What would you do as the principal? Our schools are simply not ready to accommodate everyone safely. With teachers, bus drivers, and custodians leaving, we need to take a step back. Over 200,000 Americans have died from this virus. That number takes my breath away. Over 200,000 family members have died. COVID-19 can have long-lasting effects that we simply do not understand yet. The current schedule is way too aggressive. Is it worth it? Grades 3 through 12 should continue to be virtual until we have more answers. The administration has worked very hard to put together a plan. I appreciate all their hard work. We will never have all the answers, but we need to have a better understanding of our situation and how to move forward. We need more transparency. What should happen when option 1 students outnumber the desks available? What should happen when we spread kids out into different classrooms to maintain safety and another teacher is required to be in that extra classroom? I'm a numbers person and these numbers don't add up. Our educators are absolutely phenomenal. They're working so hard to make this situation the best it can be for all students. I realize that all of us are making sacrifices during this pandemic. I realize that we are all going the extra mile to live in a pandemic. Our teachers and staff are no different. They want to teach, they want to be in a full classroom, but are they ready to teach both virtual and face-to-face at the same time? Are they ready to teach 2 classes within the same bell? Are they ready to teach their classes and those classes where the teacher has and will continue to resign or retire early? Are they ready to be responsible for cleaning every space in their classroom multiple times a day without the PPE that is required? Are our bus drivers ready to keep children distanced while they're driving? This is a time of crisis. We need to pull together and help each other make online learning work for everyone. I understand not everyone has all the resources they need to work virtually. It is not an even playing field. Our community should come together and devote more energy to those with the most need. We are all in this together and we can get through this together. Let us have more patience with each other and all the ones making unbelievably hard decisions. In summary, I'm here tonight as a mother of 3 secondary school students to ask the board members to reconsider our current aggressive timeline and to slow the process, reduce the stress, reduce the anxiety, and not rush to put all of our students back in the classroom when we are not ready. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, 3 of the in-person speakers are now in the building.
Okay.
Our first in-person speaker now will be Jamie Dutcharm.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing for public feedback and for all of your efforts in these challenging times for our schools. I am here today to voice my concerns regarding the email received on Thursday, which indicated that Old Donation School elementary students requesting option 1 could be left out of a return to in-person instruction at the school. My intent in presenting here today is to defer to other parents in addressing some of those missteps. but I am here to address the social, emotional, and neurodevelopmental concerns associated with inequitable access to in-person instruction in young children. As a neuropsychologist in Virginia Beach, I have training in these areas, and research has laid bare what is indicated in teaching young children. Indeed, my main concerns in imposing a lottery system for face-to-face instruction involve the limitations on social and emotional development in young children. To say that some children can return to school with their friends and some cannot can have unforeseen emotional and social consequences separate from educational concerns and higher learning formats. The social damage of disallowing certain children back to school via lottery cannot be overlooked or underestimated following months of social isolation. There could be lasting damage to relationships and emotional development in a population that is already at risk for psychological difficulties and living through the stressors of a pandemic. I also would like to address in greater detail how virtual instruction is being disseminated. While I cannot say enough about our teachers, how grateful I am for them, and how much I respect them, a day of virtual teaching involves logging on to something akin to a Zoom call at 8:55 in the morning and staying on that call until approximately 3:30. With time allotted for lunch and other screen breaks, in total, it's fair to say, these children are on a Zoom call or a screen for at least 5 hours. The research supports less than 2 hours a day of screen time as it relates to young brain development, and this doesn't account for more screen time once the children get off their Chromebooks for school. Requiring this level of screen exposure for kids, including those that have opted for in-person instruction, is of concern for brain development. Thank you again for listening to my concerns and to those of the other parents as we hope to achieve a viable solution for all children in the Virginia Beach City Public School System. I appreciate your time and your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lisa Parks.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. We really appreciate the forum, and sorry we were late. My name is Lisa Parks. I lived in Virginia Beach about 7 years, and I have 2 boys, one in 3rd grade at ODS and one in 4th grade at John B. Dye. First, I'd like to say I appreciate the enormous efforts of this group and really the principals and the teachers and the staff at all of the schools to make this happen. It is a Herculean effort, and we are so grateful. The reason I'm here is to support the return of students face-to-face, if so desired, and as promised in the guidelines released this summer. Within those guidelines, and as communicated as recently as last week, students will start to return to the classroom on September 29th. However, those of us as students at ODS received a different communication outlining that some of the students who chose face-to-face would not be able to return, and that the school was using a lottery system to randomly select students to remain virtual. I want to be clear that I do not support a lottery to determine which children are able to return. I believe the district has an obligation to provide equal access to education, and I feel the school board, ODS, and the district leadership owes the families of ODS a commitment to honor that obligation. In August, as you know, we made choices to allow for the schools to begin planning for this unique and very difficult school year. At ODS, we were told that the virtual learners would ideally be placed with an ODS teacher, but it was not guaranteed. As you can imagine, this was a big part of the decision-making for each family. Now we're being told that the students will remain inside the curriculum regardless of the parents' August decision, meaning that the curriculum took priority over what the family felt was best for their child. I felt that this was unacceptable, not only because it was a change in the way that we were communicated with, but also that it was largely made without substantive parental feedback to the process. It goes without saying that all of the information, students who wanted to be face-to-face, students who wanted to be virtual, staffing, and space have been well known for over a month. And I cannot contemplate the myriad of challenges to sort out, but I do expect that ODS, along with all the other schools, were given adequate time and resources to creatively solve these problems and communicate with the families if they were not to be solved. I will conclude by saying that I have no interest in assigning blame or being upset about this. I really just want to advocate for my child to return to school on October 6th with the rest of the 3rd graders in the system. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Tracy Lequid.
Welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Spence, Chairwoman Rye, Mr. Edwards, and the rest of the school board. Thank you again for your service during this critical and important time. It's kind of appropriate that I'm here tonight because apparently ODS is the big kind of to-do. I'm a product of Old Donation, but Old Donation Center. So it's evolved. I went there when it was 1 day a week, and I talked to my friend's son who attends, and he's like, 1 day? That's not enough. But I mean, I still use the lessons that I learned at Old Donation to this day. I am very proud of Virginia Beach. I have seen so many of my friends and colleagues grow through this time. In particular, myself, you know, most people would not expect me to speak up in this way. I'm a writer, you know, I'm more comfortable typing stuff out and editing it many times before it goes live. But because this is such a critical time, I am listening to my instinct. And I'm not a mom. And I'm not even a full-fledged teacher yet in a traditional sense. But I sense danger, and I'm going with that. That's what drives me to come here every time and face my fear of public speaking and the criticism of my family who only wants to do me to be my best, look my best, speak well, and share my ideas that echo many others whose feelings or who've been denied what they believe is the right approach. I'm a month-old member of the Virginia Beach Education Association. Such awesome, inspiring people. And one of the teachers said, whose friend was taken off a ventilator, this is no joke, to pass away from COVID. This teacher said, we only have one chance. There is no second try. And I speak for the child or the grandparent or the mom or the dad who may not know they have an underlying condition they're exposed to by an asymptomatic child. You know, we know that asymptomatic children are more viral. We didn't know that 2 months ago. So much is changing. So I speak for that one person who we don't know will eventually pass away. You look at the numbers. And I know this is an election year, and we're playing political games. But it is not appropriate to play games with people's lives, with children's lives, with families' lives. I truly believe that, and there are many others who've been advocating for safety for our community, for our economy, for our families and kids. So please, I agree with the other two speakers online. Stop the timeline. Slow it down. Who are the adults here? Who makes the rules? You do. We do. This community does. And we are asking you to please
and that is time.
Slow down. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And that is the end of the in-person speakers.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Consent agenda. School Board Chair announces, I have 2 items to announce this evening. A resolution, Dyslexia Awareness Month, and B, the budget calendar. Mrs. Anderson, would you please read tonight's resolution?
Thank you. I have the resolution for Dyslexia Awareness Month for October 2020. whereas dyslexia is a language-based learning disability that causes difficulties with reading, writing, spelling, and word pronunciation. And whereas the onset and severity of dyslexia varies for each individual, and whereas it takes individuals with dyslexia longer to process phonemic information, thus affecting academic growth, achievement, and self-esteem. And whereas it is important to provide effective teaching approaches and educational intervention strategies for individuals with dyslexia. And whereas Dyslexia Awareness Month is an opportunity to acknowledge educators utilizing effective teaching strategies and to celebrate the many achievements of adolescents, students, and adults with dyslexia. And whereas the school board of the City of Virginia Beach is committed to a continued focus on educating students, parents, and school staff about effective teaching strategies to address the needs of students with learning disabilities. Now therefore be it resolved that the school board of the City of Virginia Beach designates the month of October to be Dyslexia Awareness Month, and be it further resolved that the strategies and interventions to address the needs of students with learning disabilities be ongoing in Virginia Beach City Public Schools, and be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of this board, adopted by the school board of the City of Virginia Beach this 22nd day of September 2020.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. Motion to approve the consent agenda. Mrs. Riggs, second. Mrs. Hughes. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Ms. Holtz, how do you vote?
I raised my hand, yes.
Thank you. Madam Chair, we have a unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you. On to action. A motion to approve the personnel report administrative appointments. Mr. Edwards, a second. Mrs. Anderson. Discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Ms. Weems, how do you vote? Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Madam Chair, we have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. Dr. Spence, do you have any appointments to share with us this evening?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. This evening, I'd like to recognize Vashti Richards. She has served with distinction as a teacher at Larkspur Middle School, a literacy coach at Larkspur Middle. Most recently, she's been working as administrative assistant at Lynn Haven Middle School. And this evening, we're very pleased that you've accepted our recommendation for her to serve as the next assistant principal at Lansdowne Middle School. And as with before, when we're able, we will be bringing back she and others to be properly introduced to the board.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, so on to information, and we are going to continue the scheduling and staffing update that was begun at the workshop. So I guess Dr. Robertson will give a brief summary, but I do encourage the public. There was quite a lengthy presentation at the workshop which began 3:30, and there were a number of school board questions, and so this is just phase 2 of that. So,
thank you. Good evening, Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chair Melnick, members of the board, and Dr. Spence. Tonight I'll provide you another in a series of updates on student scheduling and staffing as they relate to welcoming pre-K 2 students back next Tuesday, September 29th. Grade 3 through 5 students on October 6th, and grades 6 and 9 students on October 8th. Before I get to an update on where we are from our last meeting and share next step, I want to take a moment to share how we're addressing some of the ongoing dilemmas. As new families enroll, please know the vast majority of our face-to-face classes are filled with existing students, which means that if a parent requests face-to-face, they may not get it if there's not a seat available. In addition, I am aware of a couple of scenarios where a teacher has a documented medical condition that requires him or her to teach virtually, which would then mean any student assigned to that class would receive their instruction virtually. However, any student in option 1 would still get that instruction from the classroom. And we would just place another staff member in there, not a teacher, another staff member to serve as a class monitor. We had 699 staff submit a request to teach virtually. And of those, we were able to accommodate 338 teachers with a heavy emphasis on approving those with documented medical conditions. Any teacher who did not get their preference was placed in a face-to-face position. The USDA is allowing the school division to return to the summer feeding model at all schools. That means that all children, regardless of individual eligibility, can receive breakfast and lunch meals free. All that is needed is a head count, which will allow students to quickly pick up a meal and go. Students will be able to pick up meals from the cafeteria or another area designated by the school's administration. And one of the challenges is how to feed students safely, and we've been brainstorming solutions. Elementary school principals have met with Jack Freeman and John Smith to go through different scenarios based on school configurations. They'll be addressing those plans tomorrow in the principal meeting. High school and middle school principals have done the same. They have meetings on Thursday to finalize their plans. Their challenge is not quite as large because they have only one grade level coming back and they have much larger cafeterias. There have been some questions as to whether teachers will receive their 30-minute duty-free lunch, and as in years past, principals develop schedules that provide all teachers with a duty-free lunch. And this year is no different. Schools will continue to use cafeteria monitors and assistants to cover lunches, and the assistants will receive their duty-free lunch as well. As stated previously, Option 1 pre-K students will return to school on September 29th for in-person learning. Daily schedules have been modified as necessary to provide safety throughout the day, meet the minute requirements of the Virginia Department of Education, and include face-to-face and virtual core and non-core instructional minutes. In a September 17th memo, principals were provided suggested guidelines from the Department of Teaching and Learning on elementary non-instructional core minutes to assist in developing schedules for art, music, and PE. In addition to core instruction, students will receive physical education 2 to 3 times per week with the PE teacher. Recess will be daily. It's suggested that art and music is taught every other week. And please note that the requirement for physical activity in the standard of accreditation is 100 minutes weekly, and it can be a combination of physical education and recess. And there are no required minutes for art and music, although they are being provided. As you know, last week, Dr. Kelly Hedrick, principal at ODS, shared a letter with her parents announcing that due to staffing and space limitations, she would not be able to meet all the family requests to receive face-to-face assignments. It's important for anyone listening to know that Dr. Hedrick had been working on a solution since mid-August. She never intended to blindside anyone and was simply trying to exercise the gift of time, hoping she could secure a better solution before sharing with her parents. Over the last week, I've been working with Dr. Hedrick and Dr. Rogers to take another look at the challenges to determine other solutions. And as with every challenge in this current environment, this work took time, and I'm happy to announce tonight that we identified a solution that will allow all families who chose face-to-face in grades 2 through 6 to get their choice. The school division granted Dr. Hedrick 4 new teacher allocations out of the 7 FTEs provided to me by Farrell Hunsaker to place 1 more class at grades 2, 3, 4, and 5. In addition, Dr. Rogers has committed to an additional GRT to support the new staff and students for this year. At the middle school level, Dr. Hedrick's entire grade 6 middle school teaching team, including elective teachers, have agreed to teach students in a mixed setting simultaneously, which will allow her to bring all 3 grade 6 teams back and serve both groups. In addition, Dr. Hedrick will be using other classrooms on the middle school side of ODS to house some larger elementary school classes, again to help meet family choices. Throughout, the most important goal Dr. Hedrick had was to bring back as many students and staff as possible safely, and to keep all ODS students and the ODS curriculum with an ODS teacher. As I noted on September 17th, we were prepared and today welcome back select groups of students with disability in most of our schools. In addition, all student and teacher assignments were completed for students in grades pre-K through 2, and we are ready to welcome these students back in-person learning on Tuesday, September 29th. We're in the final stages and we'll be prepared to welcome back students in grades 3 through 5 on Tuesday, October 6th, as well as students in grades 6 and 9 on Thursday, October 8th, which corresponds with the date of the next marking period. As I mentioned last Thursday, our elementary school principals have worked together to cover all of our elementary schools students, either in the home or a companion school. I'm having a little power issue here. I don't know, Regina, you want to advance this? Because it's not, there you go. Therefore, we will not operate a central VLC at the elementary level, which to me is great news because this meets our goal to keep as many students and staff as possible connected to their home school. However, due to the student scheduling complexities at the secondary level, we will need a small number of classes at both the middle school and high school level. So we are going to operate a secondary central VLC, and we're completing those plans this week. As I noted last Thursday, we continue to work with the Department of Human Resources to find teachers to fill existing vacancies. The good news is that all classrooms have either a teacher, long-term substitute, or potential central support staff in place to serve our students. In the last 2 board meetings, I've discussed that many teachers have agreed to a stipend to keep all students when we transition to in-person learning. This means they will be providing daily instruction within the scheduled class time to students who are in person and remotely using the technology tools we have provided to support synchronous instruction. As a result, we have had fewer instances where student course needs required other solutions. When they do require other solutions, our first solution at the secondary level is to offer existing teachers who are interested in taking an additional class to do so and receive a $5,600 extra block allowance. This is not available at the elementary school given teachers teach an entire grade level. This has been really popular at the middle school level, and we also have some teachers taking advantage of it at the high school level. Our second solution is use a central VLC. When we can identify at least 25 students and a teacher, we are going to create a central VLC class. However, we do have instances where we are not getting at least 25 students across our middle school or high school. And in these cases, without the current teacher agreeing to keep their assigned students, these students' course needs could not be met. In these cases, we will direct principals to meet with these teachers to explain the challenge, that no other solution exists, that they will be required to keep their students from both virtual and in-person, and for doing so will receive a stipend. To ensure all teachers are equipped to succeed in this environment, the Departments of School Leadership, Teaching and Learning, and Technology have created a professional learning series focusing on how to leverage existing technology combined with best practices and online pedagogy. This series began yesterday and will continue on Mondays for the next several weeks. Staff will have multiple opportunities to engage with their colleagues and central support staff to help them succeed. Next week, school counselors will be contacting parents and students that will have a schedule change on October 8th. School administrators will be doing the same with any teachers who may have a schedule change, although those cases are very rare. At this time, I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Robertson. So we left with Mrs. Riggs. So you are first to take advantage of this follow-up session with where we left off.
Okay, so most of my questions have been asked by, are stated in some of the speakers' times, but there were a couple, and I guess, Dr. Robertson, you're one. I'm not sure if you said this or mentioned this, but because there's so much you said, so let me ask one more time just to make sure. If a family chooses option 2, it was stated that they could not change back to option 1.
That's correct, for the first
semester.
semester.
Is that staying the same? That
Yes.
is not changed?
Yes. Now, you do, last week, we gave parents in grades 7, 8, and 10, 11, 12, because there was some misunderstanding about whether we would come back in yellow with some of those groups or not. So we gave those families the opportunity to adjust their preference, and that preference adjustment closed last Friday. Otherwise, there are no changes.
And that preference was what did you give them the options? Can you say that one more time?
In grades 7 and 8 and 10 through 12, if they wanted to change their preference from option 2 to option 1 or option 1 to option 2, we allowed them to do so. It is much easier to change from option 1 to option 2 because in a virtual environment you have larger class sizes. But in option 1 in your face-to-face classes, the limitations are pretty extreme. Classes are probably 24 or less.
Did it cause more of a hardship? Did the responses?
At select schools it did.
Okay, so you did get a significant amount of responses from.
So,
I'm not going to ask you the number,
yeah.
but I'm just asking.
Well, let me give you an example because that's a
Okay.
good question. We had 18 at a particular middle school that made a request to change, and it was skewed in one direction to go from option 1 to option 2. So it was easier to make that adjustment in terms of honoring the family choice. It did create a problem with the teacher assignments because the additional students by course selection, because secondary is so interesting, caused a teacher to have to shift a class from face-to-face to option 2 because the option 2 got overloaded. So there, yes, it did result in that one particular case with a change, and administration made the change.
Okay. I just need to make one point, and this is about the dashboard that we keep asking about. And I know that you guys are torn between it, and I understand. And, you know, sometimes it's, be careful what you wish for. I get that too. However, sometimes this affects not just the people in the schools. It affects people that work with the schools, like psychologists outside of the schools. And then they don't always get that information because in the excitement, people forget. Or your daycare centers. And sometimes that information is important to get it in such a timely manner that it might make a difference in somebody's treatment. So I just think that, again, being open and let people see our transparency might be what we need to do, especially with all that's gone and all the changes and the back and the forth. I think it's the best thing for right now, and I just wanted to state that for the record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're set for now, Mrs. Briggs? Okay. Mrs. Manning, then Mrs. Anderson.
Thank you. One of our speakers stated that they had chosen virtual learning but were being forced to go in person. I've not heard that occurring. Is that happening?
Yeah, you know, I heard that as well, and I had not heard that happening.
Okay,
So
but that's not a thing. We're not.
That's not a thing.
Okay. All right.
So
hopefully we can reach out to her and correct
so
that.
if she's still listening, that's not a thing.
Yeah,
so
we shouldn't.
I don't understand
Okay.
that.
So we just need to clarify that with her. And then, can you tell me, are there any other elementary schools right now who are in a situation that ODS was in, where they're going to be telling people in option 1 that they can't come?
There are not. What made ODS unique is the ODS curriculum. So, for example, Thorogood is a school I've used oftentimes as an example of a large number of families choosing option 1. Thorogood was able to utilize a large number of their staff who wanted to stay option 1, and then to serve their kids, and then the option 2 kids from Thorogood were partnered up with another grade level and another school. And so those adjustments will be being made as well when we start welcoming kids back.
Okay. And then this one might be for Mr. Den. I've got 2 questions similar. So I had a situation where I had a problem where I couldn't, as a parent, log into my child's Schoology, parent Schoology. And I'm like, okay, who do I contact? Do I go ahead and contact the Department of Technology? Do I contact the school? So what I did first was go into the school's website to see if if I could find that information out. I couldn't find anything related to what I was supposed to do if I had a technology problem on the school's website. I think it would be very helpful if we had something on there that even if it's just a button, click here if you need IT help to direct to the Department of Technology. Or if there are certain issues that need to remain at the school, that we provide that information as well.
Sure, absolutely. We can certainly make that happen.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then are you aware that there are applications that are being assigned in lessons through Virtual Virginia that are not accessible on the Chromebook?
I was not aware of that.
Okay, I've heard that from numerous people and people on staff as well. So I don't know exactly what applications there are. I could find out for you, but I do know that that's a problem. Students are being told that if they're taking a Virtual Virginia class, that they should be able to have access to another computer. So that's an equity issue that I think we need to address.
We'll certainly look into that.
Okay,
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Mrs. Anderson and then Mrs. Weems.
So, Mr. Robertson, could you explain the biggest difference between elementary and high school teachers for getting the stipend? Could you explain that again a little bit more in depth for me so that I don't quite understand the huge difference in the fact that high school teachers are being offered $5,000 something. Is it different? Explain the difference
Yes.
to me.
So at the secondary level, because teachers provide instruction 3 blocks a day on a 4-block day, they can take an extra class because they have a free block. Or at the middle school example I used earlier, there's a 0 block. They can pick up an extra class separate from the other 3 assignments they have. And when doing so, they get a supplement. It's called extra block allowance, $5,600. At the elementary school level, you can't do that because you're an elementary school teacher, grade 2, kindergarten. You're with those students the entire day. You don't have the luxury to say, okay, you know what, I think I'd like to teach an extra portion of the day for social studies. You just can't do that. So that is not open to elementary school teachers. Now, the stipend is completely different from the extra block allowance. That is solely a solution to honor the additional work that is required of teachers who are agreeing or being directed in those cases where there are no other student options to keep kids face-to-face and virtual at the same time. And that was money that we're using out of the CARES Act funding that Mr. Hunsaker granted us.
Okay, can you give me an example in an elementary school where a teacher, for example, would be eligible for the stipend, exactly what they would have to do to be eligible for that stipend? And also, is the stipend for a semester or for the year?
So at the elementary school level, to be fair, the model that I created was it's $750 for the semester.
If that's maximum, right?
Maximum, $750. No, that's the dollar amount, $750.
Okay.
So here's an example, 2 examples. A special education teacher at the elementary school level who serves instruction to students in a face-to-face and virtual environment at the same time. They're delivering instruction. Another example would be a 4th grade teacher, or it could be any grade, but let's use 4th grade, who's agreed to keep all their students instead of trying to split them up. And then so you 15 face-to-face students and 7 virtual students. They've kept all those students together. They're going to deliver instruction simultaneously. They would earn the stipend.
Okay. Does it matter how many virtual they have?
It does not.
Is there a maximum? In other words, can you cap it?
So we have kept the teachers in those settings with numbers that are smaller than the virtual setting. The virtual setting, which is, of course, you're all virtual, we're using the SOQ caps, which is 29 in kindergarten, but I don't think we're doing 20. We might be doing 28. In grades 1 through 3, it's 30. In grades 4 through 12, it's 35. We're not doing that with those numbers in I don't want to call it the hybrid, but in the mixed class setting, those numbers are not that big.
Okay. But do you have a specific maximum that you would cut it off and say, we just can't do this, this teacher's got too many? Is that left up to the principal, or is there
No.
something system-wide that we're,
So the directions that were given to the principals is to not add one more student to that class.
oh,
Whatever,
you mean face-to-face?
whatever the teacher agreed to, when that teacher agreed to that, that's the number.
Okay.
Don't add one more kid.
Is there pressure being put on teachers to do this?
I would say there's not pressure on teachers to do this. But pressure is really unique. Like right now, I don't feel pressure speaking to you guys because I know you care about this as deeply as I do.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was somebody else, I might be up here going, I hope I make it through this question and answer period before I fall out. I mean, pressure is relative. And so no one's twisting anybody's arm, except if you've got that class that you don't want to teach the hybrid, but there's no other solution for your kids that have been assigned to you. As we've talked about, I used Chinese early as an example. I mean, the only way those kids will be able to continue in instruction would be that you keep them. That's going to be the only time where teachers could say they would. A teacher could honestly say they were pressured because they didn't get a choice. Otherwise, they've been given a choice.
I just want to say that Ms. Manning said earlier that she felt like we should possibly look for more money to put into this to make it a little bit more worthwhile for the, not worthwhile, but, $750 is not a whole lot for a year. So if we can find more money somewhere, even if we have to dip into the money that was returned earlier from City Council, for whatever reason, I'd like to up it to at least double the amount, $1,500 maybe instead of $750. I think that would make it worthwhile for the teachers because they are going to have to do the grades. They're going to have to be in contact with the parents. There's a lot more to it than just, okay, well, this kid's going to watch me teach, face to face. There's a lot more to it. And I watched a fifth grade teacher doing a virtual fifth grade last week. I was at her house I was there about an hour and a half watching what went on. And I was so amazed at the amount of technology that she was doing and how good she was at it and how engaged the students were. The only problem I had with it was that the students, she couldn't hear them. There was some technology glitch, and there was something went wrong with something called Secure, I believe. Is that a new?
Securely.
Securely, right. So Securely, she could not see them. She could not get in to help them in specific places where they were in certain programs. So I actually filmed her with her permission and her principal's permission. Then I gave that film to Max, and I think he's working on it. So,
well, Ms. Anderson, I appreciate that, and I think anybody who's watching needs to understand a single thing. One thing: our teachers are killing themselves right now.
They are.
I mean, we know that. My wife's a teacher. John Muir's wife's a teacher. I've gone through this whole scenario, letting you know how we're connected. They are doing the very best they can to meet the needs of all of our children, and it is extremely difficult. And I want them to know that everybody on Dr. Spence's team recognizes that. We're all in this thing together. So, yes, they are working extremely hard. Whether they're doing the mixed setting or just a virtual setting, they are working extremely hard. Every one of them.
Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair, just
Yes,
real
sir.
quick if I could, Mr. Honziker's here, and it's come up a couple times now about the stipends. I'd just like him to briefly address where money is and what the
Sure.
what the
And actually,
potentials
can
are.
I just ask Dr. Robertson for clarity? I thought I heard $750 per semester, or is it per year?
I thought I heard $450.
Okay, so it's different because we're paying the secondary teachers get a stipend per class. to make it fair to the elementary school teachers, I used the mean. Go figure, I'm an ex-math teacher, right? I used the mean for secondary, and that's what the elementary gets.
And is that a semester or a year?
It's for a semester.
The 750.
It's for the semester.
That's
yes.
what I thought needed
Yes,
clarification.
which would be
So it is
1,500.
1,500 for the year.
Yes,
Okay.
if we're in that setting for the whole time, it's 1,500. Yes.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Hunziker, you're on.
Good evening. Thank you. Well, let me just start this way. We have $10.1 million in federal CARES Act funding. We have committed and budgeted and allocated all of those funds. All of the funding that we've allocated is related to COVID-19 related things. Over $900 of that COVID funding is what the stipend is, what the current stipend is. If you double it, that's almost another $1 million that we don't have. Second thing, we know that we're facing a $4.6 million shortfall of state funding. We already know that based on the summer session that the legislature has completed. At this point in time, the budget staff and I, we're massaging the budget. We're trying to make sure that we can cover that shortfall. What we don't know is what possible additional shortfall we might have of city funding. We're meeting with the city staff tomorrow to work on the 5-year forecast, and I'm hoping to find out, do they have any updated numbers on projected revenues of city revenues for the rest of the year. That's the second thing. The third thing is we possibly could take quite a hit from the state with regard to our ADM. If we don't get a state waiver for the ADM, and that hasn't happened yet, we could lose millions of dollars in state funding for this year. Average daily member, it's what state funds are based on. Average daily membership. So, we do have reversion funds, and it's going to be a pretty good chunk of funding because we purposely protected at least $23 million because we were told by the city that was a shortfall through the end of this past fiscal year. We thought there might be additional shortfall in state funds this last year, as much as $2 million in sales tax. So we protected some more money. And the city shortfall didn't really quite reach the $23 million. So we're going to have some reversion funds left. That would be money that we will come back to the board. You'll be, we just got some final numbers from the city today on a closeout. So we'll be reporting what the reversion amount is during that first meeting in October. And then we'll be coming back to you in the second meeting in October with a recommendation of how we would use those funds. That's the third thing. The fourth thing is we did put in reserve $7.5 million that the city gave us at the last minute and included it in the city's budget ordinance when they adopted the ordinance in May, the budget ordinance. it was put in a CIP, 2 CIP projects. We put a CFO reserve on that money. My hope is that once all this comes together, we might have enough reversion monies to do what we need to cover some of the shortfalls and possibly some additional needs, like possibly increasing the stipend. How much, I don't know. And that I would hope that we wouldn't have to touch the $7.5 million and allow it to be used in the CIP where we have significant needs. So that's kind of a very quick, here's where we are in real time right now with regard to our funding. So it is uncertain. We're trying to manage it every day. And so I'm happy to answer any questions. Just wanted you to know that we don't have this unlimited source of money out here that's just not committed. We're scrambling to make sure we cover the budget.
Well, that was a lot of very useful information. So with that, questions on specifically anything that Mr. Hunziker just addressed?
I'm good.
I mean, I do,
Oh,
but I don't, I want to wait my turn.
No, I'm good.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Cheryl, because I understand we have to take care of our needs, you know, if we have shortfalls. I certainly understand that. I just think that it's important for this board to acknowledge that if we have extra funds, I would like the board to acknowledge that priority should be toward our teachers in these additional stipends, especially for those going above and beyond to help our students. So while I understand we can't make that decision right now, I think that if we indicate to our teachers that that's a priority, I think, you know, that could be helpful.
Dr. Spence, and then Mrs.
Yeah,
Anderson.
just a quick response. So I did speak with Mrs. Weems. I did share with her what Mr. Hunziker shared about the timing of reporting to the board on the reversion funds. So those folks who are on the PPMC, Planning Performance Monitoring Committee for the public, got notice that the date was shifted on that meeting to be after the next board meeting so that we could meet with the PPMC to discuss those reversion funds. So just process-wise, I would suggest you just let the PPMC folks know where you'd like to see that go.
Okay, Mrs. Anderson?
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay.
I'm good now. Thank you.
Anybody else for Mr. Hunziker? Okay.
Thank
you so much. Okay, Mrs. Oh.
This is my United States Marine right here, baby.
Oh, so you're just back to...
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. All right, we have Mrs. Weems and then Mrs. Melnick.
Thank you. Yes, I was going to speak about the stipend as well, so we will definitely discuss that at the PPMC committee meeting. That comes out to be about $40 a week extra, and that is just incredibly low, in my opinion, for the massive amount of work that these teachers are having to do to juggle both virtual and face-to-face. So I look forward to a lot of discussion in that area. So I won't ask anything about that. And we have heard that teachers have chosen, that they have volunteered for these positions. They have been voluntold and they have just been told. And so I know that I know that there's quite a bit of stress surrounding this topic out there for our teachers. So hopefully we can do something to help with that. I've got a few questions, about 8 or 10, but I'll just do 2 or 3 now and then get back in the queue. For equipment, to make sure we're ready, my question is, have all the PPE materials been delivered to all the schools? Will they be delivered? Will they be there when those schools open? And what does that look like? Face shields, have they been delivered? Who's using our face shields? I'm assuming they're being used with special education, speech therapists, etc. Have they been delivered to the hands of those that need to wear them? Plexiglass, has that been delivered to the schools, and how and who is using plexiglass? And desks, are they 3 feet apart or are they 6 feet apart? Because we've heard both. So just those PPE equipment, face shields, plexiglass, and desks.
Just a couple items. So I'll start with, I'll go for the last piece. So the desks, the recommendation we have from our panel of physicians was 3 feet of distancing when wearing a mask. So planning for that, we're looking for 3 feet of separation. The question about plexiglass, by Saturday, we expect all of the current requests from schools for plexiglass to be in place. So that is ongoing. Your question about PPE, so I know that we had, one of the comments tonight was that all PPE for special education was not in place by Saturday. We had all PPE in place today, and the feedback that I mean to indicate is we have been working and pushing vendors and others to be able to make sure that we get these things in place. That should have all been there this morning, and the nurses knew to call Mary Shaw if that was not the case, and Mary Shaw did not receive any phone calls. So that's the basis for what I'm describing to you, that was all in place today when we returned our special education group to face-to-face instruction. All the questions that you asked about PPE, we can get you the answers for those, but we are continuing to work to ensure that it's provided and ready to go.
Okay, and how about face shields? Are some of our teachers using face shields so the kids can see their faces?
So there's required PPE for the face shields, and I'm going to have to consult with another member about the status of shields for those that requested.
Okay, thank you.
There's Ms. Williams.
If you unenroll your child,
Williams, I think Dr. Spence wanted to had something to weigh in with.
Okay.
We'll get the board an update on. There's two different things that have been requested. So there's a face shield, which is that thing that you wear kind of around the top of your head that then covers your face. And then there have been requests also for masks that have a clear part in the middle of them. And that clear part is largely been requested for early literacy instruction because of the phonics and the need to see the forming of the mouth. And so we are in current conversation about those, and they have not been ordered. Those have been requested but not ordered. Because again, as you heard Farrell say, it was kind of outside of the scope of the funding that was available to us, but we're looking at our funding and where we might be able to find that for those who've requested for early literacy. I think we're going to be able to accomplish that.
Okay, thank you. I think this is pretty easy, but if you unenrolled your child and they're going to private school or they're being homeschooled and you re-enroll them at any time, what are your options to re-enroll them?
You can request, but as I said earlier, the vast majority of classrooms have filled the seats available, so you would be placed in a virtual class and on a waiting list in case space is open.
Okay. Okay. And I think this is a Dr. Rogers. I know 2 weeks ago we had questions about the IB, and we've had questions about the IB program. And I know that you said that we chose not to do it. I think like Chesapeake, they kind of left the IB program exempt from the 4x4, but I never heard like why we chose that. Can you just briefly tell me why we chose to do the IB program on the 4x4 schedule and not let that group do the traditional way, the IB program? I know we've heard from a lot of kids, but I don't understand why. You just said we just chose not to do that. Can you just briefly explain why?
So the secondary schedule being in the 4x4, the reason why we did that for all of our secondary schools was for safety mitigation and to minimize the number of students who would be changing classes from one class period to the other, and that was applicable to all of our students in middle and high school in order to be able to get as many students as we can in school face-to-face and do so in a safe manner. So there was no specific isolation for programs. It was merely done to...
I realized that I know it was done 4x4, but why was it not specifically isolated in this case? Because they have a different curriculum, as does ODS. And I know other school systems surrounding us have isolated, I believe, their IB program. So just to be able to understand it, why did we not choose to go that route?
Again, we didn't isolate any to do anything different with their schedule because, again, it has staffing implications. It's also got other implications with regards to the course schedule and making sure that we can provide all students with the opportunity to return to school, but to do so in a safe manner. So the same thing will hold true for students who are taking AP courses as well. And I think your reference is such that other school divisions that offer the hybrid offer the 4x4, offer what's referred to as a skinny period, where they can offer year-long courses. And the decision at the time when we decided to do the 4x4 schedule was to do that and make it applicable for all of our students, regardless of which program they were participating in.
Okay. Okay. Okay, I've got some more questions, but one of my other colleagues can have a turn, but please put me back in the queue. Ms. Rye, thank you.
Will do. And Mrs. Melnick and then Mrs. Hughes.
Will Joe Burnsworth still be in charge of the virtual learning center for secondary?
Yes, yes. Joe Burnsworth is still going to be overseeing the secondary VLC, and Barb Sessoms will still have a role in the elementary school VLC because we think it's critically important that any of those students who are going to companion schools, as an example, that those parents have 3 people they can go to with concerns. Okay. Actually have 5. They have the principal from the home school, the principal from their transferred school, the teacher from their transferred school, the teacher from their home school, and then Barb Sessoms. So we're going to keep our eye on all those kids to make sure the transition is as smooth as possible. So Barb Sessoms is staying on in that role, and she's building out her. We're working with her right now to build out her weekly schedule to check in and do things like that. Yes.
All right, excellent. And can that face-to-face and virtual switch thing, could that, my phone blew up, so I'm assuming it's still going on. Could that be a site-based thing if principals feel like they can handle that? Because I got a lot of that when that was presented.
So maybe not sure I understand it.
So when students are face-to-face or virtual and they're switching from virtual to face-to-face, could that also be a site-based decision that maybe that's going on in some of the schools?
So virtual to face presents a challenge because you can't allow once you've established your face-to-face based upon the number of seats available, you can't let anybody else in unless you have a seat available. If you have a seat available, you should let them in to fill out the available seats in the class.
So if there are seats available,
if there are seats available, absolutely.
Okay. All right. And the last one was, because I've just gotten a lot of this too, can you explain again, please, the students who are in classrooms that have the 3-foot distances, 3 feet,
Yes.
But they have to eat, are they still going to eat lunch in that classroom? Can you just address that again for?
That's a great question.
Okay.
So 3 feet with a mask on is the distance we're placing the desks.
Correct.
When the student takes their mask off to eat, they have to have 6 feet.
Okay.
And so our solutions are to split classes. Half would go to the cafeteria, which will be set up at 6 feet apart.
Okay.
And the other half will stay in their room and eat.
Okay.
That's a solution. It's beautiful outside for another 6 weeks maybe to eat outside in some areas. There are other classrooms at schools that aren't in use. So there are a number of solutions that schools are exploring. But when that kid takes their mask off to eat, they got to have 6 feet.
Okay.
And they'll get 6 feet. They'll get 6 feet.
Just want to reassure those teachers that are in those tight classrooms.
Yes.
And thank you for recognizing them. They are exhausted.
Yes.
We know that you're exhausted. We're exhausted, and the teachers are just exhausted. And thank you for mentioning that. That's really important to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Melnick. Mrs. Hughes.
My first question is something we've touched on before, but just to reiterate, because a parent stated that she was trying to re-enroll her child and she was told that we're not accepting new students right now. I'm certain that she misunderstood that. We are accepting whoever enrolls. They just may not get their first choice of format.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we reiterated that. And then I heard from a guidance counselor, and she was asking about getting Renaissance students back to school. And of course, one of the things she stated is that students who are at Renaissance probably require more supports than, a lot of other students. And because of the low enrollment, that it would be easier to spread people out in the building. And what are our thoughts about getting them back?
So we took the approach that students that were sent to Renaissance, and let's say a student was sent to Renaissance the beginning of January last year, and their term at Renaissance was through June. Rather than saying to those students, so sorry, in March we went out and you didn't come back, so we're going to send you back to Renaissance so you can get your 3 months in, we allowed them to go back to their home school. Because we wanted to get them back acclimated to their home school as soon as possible. So we have I'm not going to say we waived their discipline term, but we made the decision that it was no fault of their own that they were not able to complete their term at Renaissance, and they've gone back to their home school.
Well, and I understand that for ones that are going back, but what about ones that would still be there, but also some students get there and want to stay.
Right.
They find that it works better for them. Are there any plans to get them back sooner rather than later?
So I can find out from name's escape. Good, great. Yes. Kay Thomas, how many students she has in the program where the kids have self-selected to stay because they really like the environment, and how many kids that she has in there right now on the behavior side.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Owens and then Mrs. Manning.
Okay. Wanted to start off by asking about the dual teaching, the face-to-face and online. I know when it was talked about last meeting, it was said that that's primarily a thing for secondary. Can you tell me about how it's played out in elementary? How many teachers or what % of teachers are going to be doing that dual, and what is the lowest grade level that we have that going on in?
So I have to go back and look at my file, but the numbers for elementary of teachers who chose that was very low. Primarily in the grades 4 and 5 is where we actually found teachers who were agreeing to do it. We had a lot of special education teachers in settings like that who decided to do both. Regardless of whether it's grade 4 or grade 12 in a setting, the training we're providing, that TSTs were trained yesterday, and next week and the following week, school teams are going to be trained, is going to be a scenario-based training. So it'll actually be where I'm going to be assigned, I mean literally me, I'm going to be assigned to be a virtual student in Miss Owens' class. And Miss Owens is going to have some of her colleagues in this training. And you're going to be acting as if you're providing instruction to your colleagues in this training, and I'm going to try to behave online. Or maybe misbehave just to get a feeling of how you would monitor both at the same time. Some of the strategies we're using is you assign a buddy, an online buddy, to a student in the class to make sure that when little Don raises his hand, or if little Don's acting stupid, or little Don has a big question on his face, like I don't know what to do, that someone goes, hey, Miss such and such, or Miss Don has a question. Right. And the training we're using, we've gone through all the different variations of interactive panels, smart boards, Promethean boards, the different computers that are connected to these boards to ensure that it doesn't matter what device or what interactive board or panel we have in our rooms, they work to provide the kids who are at home access to see, hear, and interact with the kids that are face-to-face.
So do we know if we have any first or second grade classrooms that are doing that?
I can find out.
My next one, it seems like a lot of training is going to happen on Monday, and kids will be back in the classrooms on Tuesday. The lunch process training will happen that day, how to clean the manipulatives, how you're doing the dismissal and arrival, everything kind of that goes with this in-person experience is going to happen the day before the first kids are coming in the doors. And I think rightfully so, people are concerned and anxious about it. It doesn't leave a lot of room for questions or for things to come up and have any time frame at all to make any adjustments. I'm kind of still trying to wrap my mind around the filling in for lunches, where we have the classes breaking into half so that they can have the spacing for 6 feet distancing. So maybe half are going to be in a classroom eating, the other half might be outside or in the lunchroom, or maybe everybody goes outside. And how we're using the lunch assistants to cover the teacher lunches, but they're also in the cafeteria because there's kids in the cafeteria, and that we're using the instructional coaches and assistants and security people, all hands on deck, to cover classrooms. And our teachers are exhausted, but it seems like we are pulling all their support staff from them that they typically would have, because we know that they support staff typically do a job. The security, if they're in a classroom, aren't doing security, they're doing the classroom. And I'm just concerned about how sustainable that really is. I guess that's not a question, I don't know. But I just want to make sure it's something that everybody is on the same page, that when we have our support staff doing other jobs, they're not doing the support staff stuff that they typically would do during a time when it seems like teachers need more support than ever. They are not going to have that support staff to do those things.
Yeah, so Ms. Owens, all I would say to you is, yes, you're correct. And so this is a challenge. This is an environment where there's no roadmap at all. And we are doing the very best we can to solve all the solutions to the best of our ability. I imagine that on Monday in our elementary schools, after the principals have gone through some of the things you've mentioned with their staff, they're going to come back with some additional solutions and maybe even some additional requests. So, for example, we have taken the stance that if you are a virtual teacher, you choose. If you want to come to work, great. If you don't want to come to work, teach from home. But we may come to find out that we need additional staff in the building providing monitoring students during arrival, dismissal, travel. So a virtual teacher can teach virtually from home, or they can teach virtually from the classroom. The beauty of having a virtual teacher in the classroom is that you have another set of eyes that you can use throughout the day to spread the wealth in terms of the requirements. So right now we've taken the stance that if you're a virtual teacher, you can work virtually. You don't have to come to work. I mean, we may find out that we got to come back and make a change. I mean,
my understanding is that a lot of teachers that were virtual have already been given that directive that they need to be back in the building because of whatever else needs to be covered.
So let me be clear on what the support staff. So if you are a counselor, you're an ITS, a TST, a school improvement specialist, a student activities coordinator, an LMS, a office staff, a security assistant, we need you in the building. You can't answer the phones if you're a counselor from home. You can't help someone troubleshoot on their computer if you're at home. We need you. I mean, you technically, you could say yes, but we need all hands on deck. In terms of teachers, we have not told teachers that they have to be in the building.
We're getting emails
That's not what
very
I've
directly
heard.
with the principals.
I know
So
teachers who have.
That's happening.
So the short version on that is, if that's what you're hearing, then obviously that's something we need to address. And so then tomorrow we will be communicating with our principals that right now they are not to tell their teachers who are teaching virtually that they need to be in our buildings. So that's an easy solution. We will communicate that again tomorrow. But you also have heard that there may come a point in time when we need our staff in our buildings, and when that happens, we'll let them know. And that will be a central directive to our principals, and we'll let our teachers know we need you in the building, and here are the reasons why. Right now, we centrally have not told them that. If principals have gotten that message, it is the incorrect message. We'll address it tomorrow.
One last
So
one.
could I just interject here real quick?
Yep, go ahead,
I've been told that high school teachers have been told that when ninth graders do come back, that all high school teachers will be in the building. Right.
And as I just explained, we will address that tomorrow.
They got the emails too.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, Bev.
I forwarded the emails.
Good.
And
We're
that
all
was,
on the
as
same
I
page with
understand,
that
that
one.
was
That's
one
good.
high school. But if there are other high schools, we'll make sure that that's
It's
communicated.
others. Perfect. Okay, last question from me for now. Teachers are having a part of their COVID training or their addition startup trainings, and they have a consent or signature form at the end that I've been getting concerns about, and actually had it sent to me, that at the end of the training it requires them to sign a statement that says all their questions have been answered and that they agree to comply with the current policies and the future policies. That's kind of the gist of it. The ones that are in place now and anything that will come in the future. And if it's not signed by a certain deadline, there's going to be a pay doc or something. And I just wanted to try and clarify that I hope that we could ask them to sign something that says they understand what we've given them thus far. It's kind of a stretch to say that all their questions have been answered. All of our questions even haven't been answered yet. And we're still having brainstorms and meetings of principals on the question. So on that part. But the future policies, I'd hope that we have something that says I will follow and comply with everything that we have to date, and that anytime something new comes out, you will have 7 business days or whatever it is to review it and comply, so that you comply with that. And if you don't, then we can address what you don't agree with. I don't know how we can say you agree with everything that you haven't come up with yet.
So that's Steve Lepak out of Risk Management, so I can't answer that question. And Farrell's not here.
Cami Linetti, School Board Legal Counsel, and I did not review this form that you're talking about, but you can't say to employees, you choose whether you're going to follow the rules and regulations when they come out. We don't do that when we pass policies and regulations. Every employee in the school division doesn't sign off that I agree with this new policy, this new regulation. So you can't have it that the employees choose to do that. They can weigh in when other things when they come up in the normal course of presenting them, but we can't have it signing off that they get to agree whether they're going to comply with your rules and regulations. It's just simply unworkable in any work situation on there. I think the point to that form, and again, I didn't sign off that form, so I can't tell you what it actually said, but it could say, this is your opportunity to ask questions during the training. You need to ask your questions, come to somebody on there. You can't later on say, I didn't understand what I was signing. I should have taken the time while it was being presented to me to ask my questions and follow up. But again, there are many, many things you have to sign off in a school division that you may not agree. I don't agree to pay taxes. I don't want to sign that. You have to sign that form. I don't agree to sign a 99 form. You have to sign that form. That's a federal form. So we can't leave it up to the employees to make the decision as to what rules they're going to follow when they come to work. That's a normal provision on that. I think the answer to your question is, if they didn't understand the COVID training they went through, they needed to ask their questions and follow up on that. But we don't have a lot of flexibility where somebody says, I don't agree with all your COVID stuff, so I'm not working to the school division until I get that agreement to my satisfaction. That is simply unworkable in any employment situation.
And perhaps we can forward the document, if it hadn't been already reviewed by our legal, just so that we can look at it. if it says that you agree to comply with all the cleaning standards, but you haven't been told all the cleaning standards yet because you're waiting to hear about the manipulatives and everything, then I don't see how you can sign that you agree to comply with it when you haven't been trained on it and haven't had the opportunity to ask the question, and the deadline is prior to the next training session, the Monday.
I can reassure you that the intent of that form was that you would abide by the basic principles that were in it about wearing a mask, about being safe, etc. So we'll review it. If Cammie hasn't seen that, we'll take a look at it. I mean, we're not getting a lot of concerns about that. I think we had one person call specifically about that issue. But we'll review it, and the goal is to keep people safe. And that's what the whole intent of that training was.
Okay, so teachers can be assured that they can make it to Monday and have their next professional development day and not have their pay docked because something was
Have
assigned.
whoever that is call HR, and I'll be happy to talk to them personally. Okay, yeah, and we'll review
Should we
it.
forward that to you?
Yeah, please do.
Facebook post.
And we'll get with
can.
Cammie and review the document you're talking about.
I
Thank
mean, I
you.
would just reiterate generally, if you're hearing concerns, the best time for us to hear about them the first time is probably not in a board meeting. You know, we have a process for you all to share that information with us. 4 of you have said just now, we've heard a bunch of those. Nobody on my staff has heard any of that from any of you. So it would be helpful for us to be able to answer your questions and provide solutions to the concerns that our employees have if you would share those with us. And so I would just reiterate that one more time, that would be helpful for us. But yes, you could be assured, Ms. Owens, to your specific question, that an employee is not going to have their pay docked if they haven't had the opportunity to have all of their questions fully answered. Have them contact Human Resources, and we'll work with them on their concerns. That would be very helpful, and I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Manning and then Mrs. Ricks.
Yeah, I didn't forward them because I assumed it came to all of us. I assumed Miss Rye had already forwarded them, and I know that she's been doing a great job of forwarding them. So that's why, I mean, if you want us to all forward them, I can forward them, but then I'm afraid it's going to get lost in all the messages. I agree with Miss Hughes that let's do everything we can to get our Renaissance students back. It sounds like maybe there's not a whole lot of students there right now, so I think that's imperative that the students that are left, let's do everything that we can to get them back. And kind of on a similar note, we had talked about some of our other specialty programs that we were looking at perhaps trying to prioritize those, like the Career and Technical Center, ATC. Where are we with that?
Still dependent upon transportation.
Okay.
So.
Do we know where we are with transportation for those?
Yes.
Tech Center, ATC.
Right, so we have a plan that, for what we're gonna implement. So right now, we're in the process of implementing the initial stages of the plan that are in there. Once we implement that plan, there's, the ability, and we signaled the intent to then prioritize through different programs to be able to bring them back in. So everything that you're describing is what we need to work through. We will get to those, but right now we're going to implement the initial part of the plan and then implement those adjustments as we go. Okay. But all the priorities that you described, those are exactly what we're going to go through as we determine, all right, what's the next group of students that needs to be prioritized to bring back.
Okay. And then to follow up on Ms. Weems' question regarding the IB program, I'm just having a trouble digesting the safety aspect of it because we're not asking for more students to come back in person. I'm trying to understand why we couldn't make an exception. I don't understand the skinny block that you're referring to. So can you expand on why?
The skinny block. So the two questions. I heard the why and then the skinny block. So the easier of the two is the skinny block. So on the 4x4 schedule, students take 4 courses every day for a term. Under a hybrid 4x4, students may take 3 courses every day for a term, but they'd have one of those courses every day for an entire year. Well, 2 courses every day for an entire year. So instead of having one 4x4 course that may be 90 minutes, they'd have 2 skinny periods, 45 minutes each for an entire school year. So in essence, they'd be taking 6 classes instead of 4. So that's the hybrid 4x4, and that's a model that is practiced, I believe, in Chesapeake.
Mm-hmm.
They do something similar. Here, we chose not to in order to get our students back safely and to minimize the number of classes they would have to change. So, for example, if we had a skinny block, we'd have, instead of students having 4 classes to take every day, they'd be taking 6, which you increase the number of students statistically that would have to come in contact with each other. Additionally, you increase the number of teachers that would come in contact with those students. So the decision early on, remember we made this decision to do the 4x4 block schedule. It seems like a forever ago, but at that point in time, of course, we were in a very different place in trying to make sure that we provide every opportunity for our students to be able to come back and to do so in the safest manner possible. So fast forward to now, things are a little different. And we also recognize that it takes an awful lot of time to create a schedule that's complex. We've heard many people come to talk about the different aspects of the schedule that create such complex issues. And to be able to go back and to change that right now would be an imposition, I think, on all parties involved, now, especially with students, as well as teachers, as well as parents, and as well as the counselors who would have to do that. We know it's not ideal, and we've said that many times, that it's not the ideal situation, but it was at that time the safest manner in which we could identify the best way to bring our students back to school safely.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
And then just one more question, probably for Mr. Freeman. I've gotten several questions regarding the cleaner that's being used and kind of some of the things that are written on the side of that bottle. I wrote down, if it gets into the skin or mucous membranes, call poison control. It must dry for 3 minutes before anyone gets around it. It says on it that it's approved for school use, but can you explain the safety aspect of it? Are teachers required to wear gloves, goggles? I mean,
Yeah, so there's, we've distributed goggles for use with it and wear gloves when you're cleaning. So that's in there. If an adult that's around sees an area that they want to disinfect, they can quickly do that with things that they have on hand in the classroom.
so if a student, sneezes on a desk or
Right.
something, that's when you would use it?
Absolutely.
Okay, it's not to be used in general cleaning in the classroom?
It's at their discretion. It's
Okay.
there and available for their use if they see a need. And so a lot of these things are conceptually, we kind of understand, and you've seen us clean. So for example, this one, we don't clean it between every participant, but there are times where we see things and we periodically come up and clean this desk. We do that just because you kind of understand the concept, and that's kind of what's intended. If the adult in the classroom sees something that they identify, hey, that needs
Could
to
be
be cleaned,
dangerous.
they
Okay.
have the ability to be able to clean that. So the cleaner that we have, it is an approved cleaner. It does have some precautions that are there, and that's why we provided that PPE to be able to handle it. When we procured that, that was over the summertime. You remember that there's a dearth of wipes and other products throughout the system. So we wanted to ensure that something was available in the classroom. Moving forward, we're working on a contract where we can have Lysol wipes in a classroom. So same sort of effectiveness with a different product that everybody's more familiar and comfortable with. But we felt that it was important that if
Yeah.
adult looked, we can't be in a position where, Harry, every time we do this, we call a custodian, because
Yeah.
there are not enough custodians available.
Right.
So that gives the opportunity to have disinfecting happen within the classroom using the proper PPE.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that this is probably just a short-term thing and that maybe we have some Lysol wipes coming
Yeah,
later.
so,
Okay.
and the way that Lysol wipes is gonna roll out, it's not, we have a large number of schools, it's not like we're gonna replace them all at once. So, there'll be monthly orders that we receive. This is, we're looking at doing something joint with the city. So when we receive those orders, we'll be distributing those. So it's gonna take several months before we completely replace that product. But in the meantime, there is something that is safe and effective in our schools to be able for adults to quickly address any concerns.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair, please add Ms. Weems to the queue.
Yep. So we have now Mrs. Riggs and then Mrs. Weems.
Dr. Robertson. Yes. I know you said that was this month, but I just wanted to say it one more time. We were talking about like the second grade teacher. I'm sorry. You said it once, but I just want to make sure you reiterate it. For instance, you were saying like second grade teachers for virtual would only have 30.
Virtual.
Can they have as many as a mid-30 though? Because some do.
First through third grade virtual classes are capped at 30 according to the SOQs.
Okay, well, from what I'm understanding, and I'm just getting this, I would have said it sooner, that there is some teachers, like elementary, that do have more than 30,
Yeah,
like
just-
mid-30.
We'd love to know where they are.
Okay.
Definitely.
Thank you for reiterating that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Weems and then Mrs. Melnick.
Yes, just real quick, Dr. Robertson, regardless of when a teacher volunteered or was voluntold or was guided to take virtual and in person, regardless of when they did that, they still get the stipend, correct?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to clear that up. Okay, thank you. And, excuse me?
Just to be clear, the stipend begins when the teacher, that situation occurs. So for example, any secondary teacher who's agreed to take that stipend is not in that situation yet because everybody's teaching virtually.
Right.
Yeah, but as soon as that first day, they're in.
Okay, good. Okay, and then with okay, so with the technical and career specifically, like the welding class, obviously, or any of those other classes that require so much, hands-on, when is it like almost too late to get these students to be able to catch up? Because I mean, like, what does that look like? Like a welder doing everything virtually, and what happens if we can't get them back, especially if you're 11th and 12th grade and you're not, you're one of the last groups to go back? How is that going to work where they're going to be able to catch up on that hands-on experience of building, of welding, etc.?
Yeah, so for those hands-on programs, we pushed all the hands-on parts back as far as we can, whether that's into a course that starts in the second part of the year, or whether that part of the class doesn't occur until late in the first semester. So we're getting, in those settings, we're doing all the book work and everything we possibly can now, hoping that very soon there'll be another solution to bring them back, or we're pushing the class, that particular part of the class, to the second semester.
Yeah, I sure hope we can get those students, back and work out the transportation or whatever the logistics are, because they have to have that hands-on. I know after we did some of the virtual, or maybe it was after the ELP, we kind of had some data about, how many students were logged on, how many, I think y'all called it, participated significantly or participated not at all or whatever. Have we, going into the third week, do we have any data of the percentage of students who are logging on? I'm hoping it's very, very high, but have we even done that, or do we plan on getting that data?
Yeah, so we have data on logging into ClassLink, and of course, we have attendance data. We got the 10-day count. 10th day is tomorrow, so we'll have the 10-day count data on Thursday. There are progress reports upcoming, and of course, the end of the first term is upcoming, or end of the first marking period is upcoming for secondary. So David looks like he's got something over here. Hold on. You can't see this, Miss Weems, because you're like on a speaker.
Yes, it's the new improved me.
Ms. Williams. So far, our numbers indicate that approximately 98% of
Students
our
have
students
logged in through the ClassLink platform. So those numbers look pretty good so far.
Okay, not 98% like daily, that they're logged in daily or once or?
I believe I
At
did
the
that.
end of last week, so I did it over the course of the week.
Okay, excellent. I like to hear that. If we could get some, feedback, especially as we get more and more into this, if we have to, stay virtual longer or for some reason, if we could just kind of keep an eye on that, I would be very interested in that.
Sure, no problem.
And let's see. Okay, and I know we have heard and we all have different opinions of when to go back and when not to go back. And, now we have a plan to follow. But as far as getting back totally to normal, second semester, let's say, pretty much we have to have pretty much no social distancing, and health-wise, we're just doing great with the virus. And to get back, no social distancing. Am I correct to assume that?
We would have to comply with the guidance that's out there, under the governor's orders and everything else. And so, yes, I think at this point, green would be when we would, begin to want to bring more students back, but we still have to adhere to some physical distancing guidelines until we're told otherwise.
Okay.
I think to bring all students back.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Weems, Mrs. Melnick.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, on the last one. So last question, Dr. Bergen. So it was reported tonight that we had 660, just for round numbers, teachers that applied to be virtual teachers. 300 some of those were granted a virtual position. So if we have to have all hands on deck, how do we ask those 300 some teachers to come back when they were granted a medical reason to not be there to begin with?
Sure. So let's clarify. We asked all of our teachers when we were in our planning stages for their preference. What is your preference? Would you prefer to come in and teach in person, or would you prefer to teach by remote? We simultaneously asked our parents for their preference for their children. And then the sausage making has occurred, at the school level, of matching students and staff and making class sizes work and maintaining health and safety mitigation. And through that process, some teachers have not received their preference. But it's my understanding, until someone in this room tells me differently, that any teacher that has submitted information about their current medical situation, that they are at risk to be in person, we are not calling them back into the building. Now, am I incorrect about that? You're not. I'm not incorrect about that. But there are some number of teachers who requested a preference to be virtual, and we cannot accommodate their preference.
That's right. So
we
I'm
need them to
talking
be in person.
specifically about the 300 some teachers who were granted a virtual spot.
Yes.
I think you're asking, are they going to have to come back into the building to work if they're teaching virtually? Is that
Correct.
what you're asking?
Right.
No.
Okay.
If they've got a health accommodation to work virtually and to work remotely, we're not going to ask them to come back into the building to work.
All right. Thank you for that clarification.
Right. Now, what Dr. Robertson was alluding to is there's other teachers who asked for a virtual assignment. Their preference was for virtual. It's not for medical reasons. It's a preference. Other circumstances, valid.
That's separate.
Right?
I'm just talking about the three.
We may need them to come back
Okay.
in person, even the virtual teachers, not today, but as we consider phasing back more students as we get closer to green and our numbers increase, and we have more children coming in and out of the school who need to be monitored, and we need to safely care for the environment. At some point in the future, we may need to ask more teachers who are teaching virtually to be physically present in the building. But we've not made that determination today. Have we? We've not. So
I see.
if that's being communicated differently, and this is, if I may just, I'm in the cleanup, I'm in the cleanup now, Dr. Robertson. There have been a number of comments tonight, which I appreciate very much, that there's a lot of anxiousness from our teachers. I completely get it. My wife and I talk to our son, if not every day, regularly. He's in his 3rd year of teaching. His wife is in her 2nd year of teaching. They're very anxious. Teachers are anxious. They haven't been in a classroom, many of our teachers, for 6 months. They left in March. They've been teaching virtually. They've been working very hard. They're exhausting themselves. We know that. And they have questions, and they want to know, how's it going to work? You know, how do I organize my classroom? How do I care for the materials? How do I care for the children? They have lots of questions. And their first and best person to ask those questions to is their principal. And so as you're being contacted by teachers and teachers who are listening, please talk with your principals. Most of us on our senior staff, before we were in these positions, we were principals. Before that, we were teachers. This is my 31st year in public education. I've never seen a year like this. None of us have. There's nothing normal about this year. It's different. It's not going to be perfect. It may look different in some schools, which is concerning because we do have some health and safety mitigations which are not negotiable. But in terms of some things like will the children eat in the classroom or in the cafeteria? You know, that's a question we've heard. Well, in some schools, they might be able to eat in the classroom. In other schools, they might be eating in the cafeteria. In some schools, it might be a split between the two. Will they have art in the classroom or art in the art room? Well, that might depend on the school, how many children there are in the section, how big the art room is. It might vary from one school to the next. But these are conversations that will occur between teachers and principals, always with health and safety mitigations at the forefront. And decisions will be made by the principal in collaboration with their teachers. If there is a concern from a teacher after they've spoken to their principal, or the principal has concerns after they've had this conversation, their next point of contact is our docile team. Our docile team and the rest of our support team, we meet every day. We are in constant communication with one another. So if Dr. Robertson or his docile team have questions about health and safety mitigations or operational questions, we work with Mr. Freeman. If they have staffing concerns, we work with Mr. Mayer. If they have technology concerns, we work with Mr. Dinn. And we're all together every day talking about these things. So I appreciate the level of engagement that our board has had here tonight and that we've had leading up to tonight and the level of engagement we'll have as we leave here. The question about email and forwarding them, your chair, I'll acknowledge what one of your members has said, does a masterful job of forwarding emails to us as an administration. We read them all. I read them all. And I work with Dr. Spence and with our chief officers to make sure that we are responding back through to the school to make sure that we're answering principals' questions and supporting them. So if you receive an email as an individual board member and you're not certain if other board members have received it, if you just check with the chair, if the chair also received the same message, then we're going to get it from the chair. If it's something that a teacher contacted you and only you, which I understand happens for some of you, you're the only person that has that information, please forward that information to us after you've confirmed that the teacher has tried to address this matter with his or her principal first. All right?
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that.
Madam Chair, Ms. Weems has her hand raised again.
All right, Mrs. Weems.
Excuse me. Yes, I just want to thank staff for answering all of our questions, and I want to thank. I think it's great that my colleagues have been so engaged, and you know, tonight, folks, we asked almost 50 questions. So I would like my colleagues to understand that, you know, at times like this, it's important to have meetings. And during the budget cycle, we have more meetings. We have a meeting a week. So I think that in the future, if we need more meetings, because this is such a complicated issue, and it's not just one of those that you can go read your emails, because our constituents read their emails and there's lots of information going out. There's different interpretations. So I think a meeting like tonight was great. I wish we would have had one last week because we could have done, some more questions. And even if I answer a question or our chair answers it to that one person that writes in, there's 200 other teachers that have the same question. There's 500 other parents that have the same question. And so I just want to hope that my colleagues will have an open mind that sometimes we do need more meetings, just like we have at the budget cycle, especially if a hot topic's going to come up and it's going to be very hard to understand. And people just like to hear our questions. I mean, the 50-something questions we had tonight then yo-yoed into other questions. So I just thank the staff again for answering all these questions. We're on our 5th hour and we concentrated on this one subject. We could probably have a meeting every week with this. But I just want to thank everybody for asking such good questions. I hope we have not confused our public even more. I don't think we have. And I think that those constituents that are listening appreciate the questions and appreciate that we read the emails and we ask the questions that they want to get answers to. So I just kudos to everyone for participating and for those who spoke tonight and for those who are listening in. Thank you.
Thank you. So before we move on to information, I misunderstood. Okay, Mrs. Anderson.
I just want to say, I want to thank the staff and Dr. Bergen and Dr. Spence, Dr. Robertson. We've sent you several emails, and I appreciate the fact that you've gotten back to us and that you've been receptive to getting our forwarding emails. It's comforting to know that if I have a question to ask, I can just shoot you a quick email or sometimes a text, and you usually get back to me. So I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate the fact that you're receptive to still accepting those emails and trying to quell all the questions that are out there and try to answer them as much as we can. So thank you.
And I just want to make one comment, and it does trace back to the 1,200 students with special needs who started today. And I think that we just need to give due where it's deserved, starting with our OPEC team and our senior staff. And it's so easy for us to take for granted, this seems so obvious, right? Like, well, of course these most needy children should start on such and such a date, but it didn't just magically happen. I know everybody here realizes that, but it did take a Herculean effort that was worked on for much more than a month, I know, to get, even if it was just a week or two sooner, it's just, I think it sends an important message to these parents that we all do understand those very special needs and that those extra leaps were made to make it happen. So, I'm just saying thank you on behalf of all of us here for those efforts, because the children are the ultimate beneficiaries, and for the staff as well who had to step up and return sooner. So you have our sincere appreciation. So with that, we are up to standing committee reports. And I'll look for any show of hands, virtual or otherwise.
Ms. Weems has her hand raised.
Okay, Mrs. Weems.
Yes, the Special Education Advisory Board, as we fondly refer to as SEAC, met, and they are, of course, going ahead with a resource fair that they always host every year, usually at Lansdowne High School. This year it will be virtual, and it will be October 6th, 5:30 to 8:30. Ms. Allen has informed me of about 6 or 7 different ways that she will promote this resource fair. And also we're going to try to get an email list and also do a targeted email that we'll be working on. So I think it's going to be a great event. Again, it's October 6th, 5:30 to 8:30. And also the SEAC committee talked about how they can become more involved in policies. And so I will talk to Miss Riggs. We played telephone tag yesterday and today. So Miss Riggs will catch up tomorrow, and I'll share their ideas and we'll make it happen. So again, SEAC has done a great job, and we really look forward to a great resource fair. It will look a little differently, but especially during these times for this community of special needs, I think a resource fair will be very, very helpful. Thank you.
You.
Thank you. The Equity Council met last Tuesday virtually. Myself and Ms. Felton attended. We had an excellent meeting. Very happy to see that we had probably one of the bigger or biggest groups that I've seen since we've been meeting or since I've been on council. So I was excited to see all the interest and new members. I thought it was a very productive meeting. We had Chief Lee and I'm drawing a blank on our other guest that maybe Ms. Felton can help
It
with.
was Chief Lee and tribal members, Ms. Strickland and Mr. Michael Cloud Butler, who attended. And we specifically focused in on some of our schools that had Native American mascots. They brought very robust information, and the main theme that came out of that from Chief Lockamy, who is the Chief Emeritus for the Nazman tribe. So he was very good, instrumental in that. And the main thing they talked about was educating, coming out to the schools to educate or use an educational tool to show how Native American regalia can be used and how it should form together. Something they said that we probably don't think is important, but it's important how we put those things together. The meeting was very robust. We came away with a lot of enlightenment on how to move forward. Also, Dr. Parrott talked about celebrating the Spanish Heritage Month, and she put forth a great emphasis on that as well. So we're moving forward, and as Ms. Owens has said, the meeting was attended very well. We had, it looked like over 30-some participants. It could have been more, but it was very, very, very good and well attended. So I'm looking forward to the next conversation with the Chief Lee and Tribal Leader Strickland and Michael Butler, Cloud Butler.
Okay, thank you, ladies. Anybody else? Okay, well, that concludes our formal meeting. And Madam Clerk, is my understanding correct that we have one non-agenda speaker?
The one non-agenda speaker is Sarah